Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to PAN IIT 2024 Global Conference. It is my honor to be with you all today. I am Santosh Somireddy, founder and CEO of Somireddy Law Group. Somireddy Law Group is a full-service law firm with offices in Virginia, New Jersey, North Carolina, and India. Our core areas of practice include immigration, litigation, corporate, and employment law. We are currently licensed in 14 states and the federal courts. Please, when you get a chance, visit our booth to get to know more about us. So, it is my utmost pleasure to introduce the keynote speakers for today's session. I'll be introducing Mr. Vinod Khosla first, and then Mr. Malhotra. Mr. Khosla is an entrepreneur, investor, and a technology fan. He is the founder of Khosla Ventures, focused on impactful technology investments in software, AI, robotics, 3D printing, healthcare, and more. Mr. Khosla was a founder of Daisy Systems and the founding CEO of Sun Microsystems, where he pioneered open systems and commercial RISC processors. One of Mr. Khosla's greatest passions is being a mentor to entrepreneurs, assisting entrepreneurs and helping them build technology-based businesses. Mr. Khosla is driven by the desire to make a positive impact through technology to reinvent social infrastructure and multiply resources. He is also passionate about social entrepreneurship. Mr. Khosla holds a Bachelor of Technology in Electrical Engineering from IIT New Delhi, a Master's in Biomedical Engineering from Carnegie Mellon University, and an MBA from the Stanford Graduate School of Business. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Mr. Vinod Khosla.
Good morning, everybody.
Ladies and gentlemen, let us invite the next keynote speaker, Mr. Arjun Malhotra. Mr. Malhotra has been a prominent figure in the Indian IT entrepreneur scene. He is widely renowned for the instrumental role in co-founding the HCL Group way back in 1975. After graduating from the Doom School and IIT Kharagpur with the BC Roy Gold Medal, he had an illustrious career in HCL, from where he went on to successfully build and exit companies such as TechSpan and Headstrong. Mr. Malhotra's wisdom is helping build several organizations worldwide, as well as eminent institutions such as ISB Hyderabad and IIT Kharagpur Foundation. His contributions to the Indian IT industry were recognized with several distinguished awards, including the Doctor of Science from IIT Kharagpur in 2012 and the DQ Lifetime Achievement Award in 2018. He is also founder of Speak Mackay, now India's largest charitable, social, and cultural NGO. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Mr. Arjun Malhotra. Ladies and gentlemen, a small request, kindly download the app so that you can post any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Suresh. So as you see, I have my cheat sheet. So I will be asking Vinod a few questions. And, thank you for making it early in the morning. I am really surprised and happy to see so many people here. I guess, DC is better than the Bay Area. In the Bay Area, we would have had a fairly sparse audience at this time of the morning. Thank you. So Vinod, you've heard the background. So I'm going to ask Vinod about some of his thoughts about the future. Vinod does tend to have interesting and different opinions than a lot of experts in the field. So I, and I guess all of you, would really be learning a lot about how to look at things in a slightly different way as we see what's happening in technology in the future. So, let me start with the first question. How have the past few years shaped your outlook today on the societal reinvention as well as technology to do so? I mean, like COVID, Ukraine, what's happening in China, and now what's happening in the Middle East.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear us okay in the back? Great. There's a little echo. It looks like they haven't heard of echo cancellation as a technique, but there's an echo, so it's hard to actually understand what's coming back. But, I'm a huge technology optimist. In fact, my bio now is technology possibilist and an entrepreneurial zealot. It's pretty simple. I think over the next 25 or so years, we will do more for societal progress than we've done in the last 200 years. That's the possibility that all of you get to work on. What Arjun's referring to is after I turned 60, I'm 69 this month, I said, what should I work on, sailing or golfing? I decided to look at US and global GDP and said, what part of non-governmental GDP can't be changed? And I wrote a 50-page document for myself, which is public. It's called Reinventing Societal Infrastructure, with one simple idea. About 10% of the world's population, about 700 or 800 million people, have a very rich lifestyle. That means rich in transportation, rich in education, rich in healthcare, rich in housing, any way you look at it, rich in entertainment. How can we get 8 billion people to have the same resources without destroying the planet? We can't have 10 times more steel. We can't have 10 times more cars. Imagine 10 times more cars on the planet. 10 times more doctors or 10 times more teachers. So the answer I came up with, and I got really excited in my 60s, is technology is the answer to all these problems. Can you get a pound of steel to go 10 times further in building cars, which means just 10 times the number of miles per car? And the answer was, I couldn't find an area of GDP where you couldn't do a 5 to 10x multiplication of resources by using them better instead of having more steel, having more cement, having more lithium, those kinds of things.
So, many years ago, the late Dr. James Martin had talked about envisioning a world where bandwidth was pervasive, infinite, and free. And he said that any plan you do for the future, you've got to look at, imagine an environment where bandwidth is available on that basis. And I think what you're really saying is we don't just need to look at quote-unquote bandwidth, but we need to see what that can do or how that can help us in a myriad of industries that would be able to. Great. The other thing I wanted to check.
Here's my radical view. If society allows it, it's always by permission of society and democracy, we can, in fact, make the need for work for human beings go away in the next 25 years. Humans will work because they want to work, and I love my work, not because they need to work. It's great to have my kind of job. It's not great to have a job working on an assembly line at General Motors for 8 hours a day, 30 years, doing the same thing, some assembly job. Most of the jobs on the planet are undesirable jobs that people do because they need to. And I think that need will go away because there'll be sufficient abundance in technology, driven by technology. If society adapts these technologies, there's lots of reasons why that might not happen. But about 2 months ago, in November, I issued 11 large predictions for society in the next 25 years. And they're on my Twitter, so you can find them. One of them, for example, was in 25 years, we can replace most cars in most cities. Why? Because the right public transit system can be better than self-driving cars. And it would be better because it would be 2-person or 4-person vehicles. It'd be point-to-point. It wouldn't be scheduled. And people tell me I'm crazy. But San Jose, California just had a bid for a public transit system to connect the old airport to the new Google campus, to the old Apple campus. There were 32 bidders invited. We weren't invited. We bid over the transom. And as a startup, won a tender to build a public transit system, even though we had no examples and no credibility. Why? Because the idea was so compelling. 1/10 the cost for public transit, lower prices, much faster service, much more demand, because it would be faster and better than a personal Uber. In fact, it'd be better than if you had a chauffeured car. That's possible with technology. I won't go into the details, but that's possible.
Absolutely.
Right? And we were just talking backstage. One of my other predictions is everybody on the planet in the next 10 years can have a free doctor. They can have a free teacher, personal tutor. My son in a for-profit company is working on free primary care doctors for everybody. My wife has a nonprofit, and Sal Khan is speaking later, free tutors. And the tutors, AI tutors can do a lot more than what a human teacher can. Our tutors actually find gaps in learning and actually teach to the gaps in learning, what the student doesn't understand. So wherever I look, whether it's expertise, in a village in India, you can't get an oncologist if you, God forbid, get cancer. You should be able to get an AI oncologist for every patient. In fact, God forbid anybody here gets cancer, you go to one of the premium cancer centers like Memorial Sloan Kettering or MD Anderson or Fred Hutchinson. And you can get a tumor board if you can afford it. Every person on the planet should be able to get a better tumor board than I could today in the US. That's the possibility of technology, whether it's cars, whether it's transportation, whether it's mineral resources. AI is going to discover more minerals than we possibly have. So it frustrates me when pundits, and I have a thing against pundits, talk about we won't have enough lithium or enough copper for electric cars. That's only a matter of discovery and creativity.
Yeah, I think you've morphed into the next question I wanted to ask.
I talk a lot.
Though you're pretty clear that you don't trust experts in their forecasts. Tell us a bit more about it.
So it was in the early 2000s, I started working on climate. I always like to look at what are large questions. So in the year 2000, that was 24 years ago or so, I saw two large problems that were really interesting, fun, and hugely impactful. One was poverty, and one was climate. So I actually went and spent time with Professor Yunus in Bangladesh. Unfortunately, the government is trying to put him in prison. But I actually went into the villages in Bangladesh and India and spent time with them. It was very clear microfinance was a powerful tool. But the other problem was climate. And when I looked at it, and looked at all the expert forecasts, I said, I don't believe even a single one of them. And I said, why is it? So I actually, and this is maybe the most important message to this group. I looked at the forecasts of experts in climate and other areas, in climate technologies. And they were simple extrapolations of the past instead of the future I thought could be created in climate. Mm-hmm. And so I went to probably the best expert in the world, which is sort of sad, in expert opinion, Professor Phil Tetlock, and he has a great book called Expert Political Judgment. If you're inclined to read a statistically heavy book, and he captured 20 years of research in expert opinion. He followed 28,000 experts across 84,000 forecasts for 20 years and said, what is the accuracy of an expert? And the answer was, this is in a technical book, about the accuracy of dart-throwing monkeys was the statement he used. No, this is true. That's how accurate experts were in projecting into the future. They could talk about the past. And we've seen this over and over again. And we should come back to it. If you look at Ukraine, every expert said Ukraine will lose to Russia within a week or two. And the forecast varied between days to a few weeks when the Russian army would overwhelm Ukraine. That was expert opinion, because that's what was expected. Today, the thing is the war can't be resolved, neither side will win. I look at these talking heads on TV and I say, they can just tell me what everybody else expects, as opposed to Zelensky said, no, we're going to fight this. We'll create a different, new paradigm. And he did. And now the world believes that. So that's how accurate expert opinion is. And the reason I spend time on this, and I spent a lot of time researching expert opinion, like, why am I not believing anything? Because I was asking fundamental first principles questions. And there's a great consumer version of this book, Expert Political Judgment by Phil Tetlock. It's a very technical book, so some of you may not enjoy the statistics. Dan Gardner wrote a consumerized version called Future Babble, because literally experts do future babble. And when an entrepreneur comes around and changes those assumptions, and that's in the hands of all of you, technologists who will want to be entrepreneurs. The world changes. And so, let me give you two examples. Everybody said to me, and the Department of Energy, not very far from where we are sitting, issued a forecast in 2010, 2011, talking to all the experts at General Motors and Volkswagen, all the auto companies. They projected the number of electric cars in the United States in 2035, a 25-year forecast. Elon Musk, who knew nothing about cars, nothing. He had no expertise, never worked in the auto industry, shipped more cars in 2016 than the Department of Energy had projected in 2035. And I'm saying this to empower you to say, no matter what the area, and I hope one of you takes me seriously, you make the world happen the way you want it. If you leave it to the big companies, it will happen a different way. I know Arvind is speaking from IBM. If we left the computing to IBM, distributed computing would not have happened. When we open sourced NFS at Sun in the early 80s, I gave the computer code to Carnegie Mellon University, which was funded by IBM. IBM lawyers opposed their using open source code because they didn't know the legal implications in a research university they were funding. You know, IBM didn't do AWS, General Motors didn't do the electric car, Volkswagen didn't do Waymo self-driving. No large innovation, not one that I have been able to find, a large innovation. Over the last 40 years, I've been doing innovation. Sorry, I can talk to any of these topics passionately. Has come from somebody who was an expert or even knew the area. Elon Musk knew nothing about cars, so he could reinvent what an electric car was. Airbnb could reinvent hoteling in a way that Uber or, Hyatt and Hilton couldn't. Uber could reinvent transportation the way Hertz and Avis couldn't. Many of you have a Hertz car. No matter where I look, even media, you'd think ABC, NBC, Fox would do media. Who reinvented media? It was Twitter and YouTube and Netflix and Facebook, people who didn't know they were in the media business. Everywhere you look, you take something that was almost a national effort, rockets. Between Elon Musk and Rocket Lab, they did way more innovation in rocketry, which was supposed to be a national imperative, not something a startup could do. So whether it's finance or rockets or manufacturing, all large innovation will come from a big company, will never come from a big company. You know, Intel can do a 15 nanometer semiconductor process to 9 to 5 to 3, things that are logical progressions. Large leaps of innovation doesn't happen. But you started somewhere where I want to go that I ignored. There's three very, very large things that have happened in the last 3 years, that will create the largest opportunity for innovation on the planet. So Ukraine, I've referred to, was really unfortunate. COVID was really unfortunate. What have they done? From an entrepreneur's perspective, and large companies too, but they won't do anything about it. Ukraine has convinced the world that an energy transition is necessary. If I'd said to any expert 3 years ago that Germany doesn't have to depend on Russian gas, I'd be laughed out of the room. Today, Germany has no Russian gas being used. That large an energy transition happened in years. So I do think Ukraine created an opportunity in the next 2 to 3 decades to create a transition for climate that wasn't possible 4 years ago. What happened in COVID? China determined the world's response because they controlled the world's supply chain. And President Xi, who's our biggest enemy, I'm a real hawk on China. They're the worst thing. They're our biggest enemy, and we can come back and talk about it. For Western values, not just the US, fundamentally Western values. They forced the world to their whim and fancy in their policy, COVID lockdowns, all that. Now the world is convinced we need to move supply chain manufacturing out of China. We need to move dependence on China to other parts of the world. That's created a massive opportunity, whether it's for steel manufacturing, which is part of the climate transition, or for supply chain and assembly. Those are massive opportunities in robotics and AI. So Ukraine, China, or COVID, and finally AI has created an opportunity for all the entrepreneurs here that is larger than anything we can imagine. And that's a beautiful opportunity for all of you. Gets me really energized. I work on these every day. I probably still work 80 hours a week. And I hope at age 69, my sincere hope is to be working on these problems. I call them these opportunities for the next 25 years. You know, Warren Buffett is 93. He's still working, so I have at least 25 years of work left, health permitting. Health is something you always cross your fingers. But my point is, there's such a large opportunity, and we will come out in 25 years. One of my 11 predictions is we don't have to have a coal or natural gas plant in the world. All of it, I believe, will be replaced by fusion energy. So 5 years ago, against the advice of the Department of Energy, which I talked to, they advised me not to work on fusion because they had no forecast for fusion being real. I think in the next 20 years, we replace every coal and natural gas plant, all fossil fuels, with fusion energy, not by building new plants. I actually think we'll just build fusion boilers. A boiler is easy to build. There's only 5,000 power plants in the US. It's not a lot. Before the Second World War, the 10 years before the Second World War started, the US had built 5 Liberty warships in the previous 10 years. But when the war started, Second World War, the US built 5,000 Liberty warships in the next 5 years. And a fusion boiler, especially using semiconductor techniques, because high-temperature superconductors is a technology like solar cells. It's a semiconductor process. We can build 5,000 boilers and replace every boiler in every existing plant in this country and then do it for the rest of the world. So very, very optimistic. I'd urge you to look at these 11 forecasts I have and work on them. I think we can have, one of my forecasts says we'll have within 25 years 1 billion bipedal robots capable of doing more physical work than all the humans on the planet, which is why we will free people from the need for jobs. We will need income redistribution, universal basic income, country by country. But if we hold up displacing jobs, then we will have a problem. We'll fall behind China. Sorry.
No, not at all. You
I love talking about these things.
Pretty much answered a part of my next question. But I just want to take a moment and sort of remind everyone that, you know, we all depend on experts in economics to tell us what's going to happen with the economy. And I think all of them have been proved wrong because everyone said a recession is coming. And now everyone says, oh, actually, because of some statistics in economics, there's not going to be a recession. But it sort of doesn't follow the trend that we've seen over the last few years when inflation goes up and interest rates go up and all that stuff. So I think I completely agree that we have to form our own opinions, even in areas where quote-unquote technology doesn't play a major role. But you sort of morphed into
Well, I'll just give you one example since Rajat was just on the stage. I first ran into this in 1986. I looked at the forecast McKinsey had done for AT&T for the number of cell phones in the United States in the year 2000. The McKinsey forecast for the number of cell phones in the United States was 900-some thousand phones. The actual number in the year 2000 was 109 million. In fact, based on this forecast, AT&T got out of the cell phone business because they're not interested in something that served 900,000 people. They had 100 million some customers. And so they got out of the business, and because of that, they went bankrupt. Most people think of AT&T as surviving today. AT&T was bought up by a wireless startup called Singular in a complex structuring, and they kept the brand. So because of these expert forecasts, AT&T went out of business. So it can happen to everybody. General Motors almost went out of business. Clearly, Tesla is dominating market valuations in the auto industry. And then I just talked about bipedal robots. I think in 25 years, it's a much larger business than the automotive business, because the automotive business will shrink if we have the right kind of self-driving public transit vehicles that we are already starting to prove out. Car industry will shrink dramatically by 5x, and there's no forecast that says that, while bipedal robots will be a larger manufacturing industry in dollar volume than the auto industry is today.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to get audience questions, and my tablet is giving some kind of problem. So the app isn't really working on this. So let me just continue with another question till this thing gets fixed. You know, we are starting 2024 off. I mean, we've just gone into it. I wanted to ask you, what are your predictions?
I can give you my phone. You can have the questions there. Sure. I can't read them, but...
So there's a question here that, what do you think of clean energy? Where the hell? Yeah, here it is. What do you think of clean energy portfolio mix? This thing keeps in the world in the next 20 years.
I do think carbon is a solvable problem. It is much, much simpler than we think if policy will allow it and if the environmentalists get out of the way. They push for the wrong solutions. You know, I think it was 2007, California was pushing for hydrogen cars, and I said, that won't happen. And I made lots of mistakes, by the way. I make more mistakes than anybody. I'd like to say there's probably not a person in this room who has failed more times than I have in trying to do things. And so there's a Harvard Business School case, the first line of which is, my willingness to fail allows me to succeed, because I never get embarrassed when I fail. Because I always say, I'd rather try and fail than fail to try. And 99% of the people always fail to try. Back to the clean energy question. If we look at steel manufacturing, we can reinvent it quite easily. Now, there's various attempts at it, electrical approaches to steel. We have two different companies using lasers to reduce steel. Now, nobody thought of that. But nobody thought of fusion in a different way 5 years ago when we started on fusion. We have two different projects in fusion. And that's a good example of an area of we can replace power, and it's on nobody's forecast. And we still have expert opinion. President Biden just committed to 3x more nuclear plants. You can invent all of the fusion technology faster than you can permit one new fission plant because of all the NIMBYism. So I know we're short of questions. Every area, I'd refer you to this piece I have that I wrote in 2021. It only takes 12 people in the dozen areas of technology that would revolutionize clean energy. And we're working on 3 or 4 of them already. But all of them can be solved in the next 25 years.
I'm sorry, guys, the time is
Fabulous
up.
note to end on.
There are a
And
number
what-
of questions there.
What
but
a wonderful way to kick us off. Thank you both so much. That
Thank
was
you.
Thank you.
Absolutely fabulous. Thank you again. We have some gifts for you. Appreciate your time.